psychological studies that talks about the rewiring of the brain, the dopamine, distractions, all of those things. I challenge teachers to sit through professional development without getting on their phone and watching videos. Like, let's start there.
You are so anti-teacher. It's crazy.
I love teachers. I just don't like BS. Yeah.
And I want to co-sign that 100% because even when I was a teacher, like when I started seeing like students start coming in with those things in their ears, I'm like, what's those things in your ears? No, there's no headphones. Oh no, sir, just it's hooked up to my phone and I'm not listening to nothing. Nah, bruh, take it off. Yeah. And even just like talking with them, students would admit to you in their moments, like, yeah, I get distracted sometimes with that phone. They'll admit that to you, that it's in the way of their learning. And yes, you can use it for like a learning tool, but I don't know if the benefits outweigh the cost.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
There's a small benefit. Yes, there is a benefit. Yes, there's a thing. But first of all, the effectiveness you have to have as a teacher to say, hey, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to do this. Take out your phone and do that. That means you're a highly effective educator that, again, has a sense of purpose and community in there where the culture is a way where, like, yes, we're going to do this. And then we're not going to be distracted. We're going to put the tool away.
It is Freedom Friday and you are still not free. Welcome to another episode of Freedom Friday. It is Friday and you're still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this hour with Sharif, El-Mekki-ish, and me. And we are going to talk today a little bit about dysregulation in classrooms. We have a clip of a teacher talking about what's really going on in classrooms. And my eyebrows go up every time I see somebody say, this is what's really going on in the classrooms, because I never know if it is or isn't. I just hear different things from different teachers. But this is an interesting clip because my first reaction was to be, well, no, it's not like that. You're just, I don't know, somehow blame it on the teacher. But the more I listen to what she has to say about the vacant eyes of students, the students who are now, post-COVID, who are no longer really interested in the normal flow of schooling. There's some stuff here I just can't discount. So I thought I'd bring it to Freedom Friday so that I could bring it to my two resident educators who can give me their feedback, Ish and Sharif, on what you think about this clip. So let's load up, play it, and see what you think about it.
I think that you guys don't know what's going on in education right now. That's fine. Like, how could you know unless you were working in it? But I think you need to know. So here's exactly what it's like right now working in public education. First of all, the kids have no ability to be bored whatsoever. They live on their phones and they're just fed a constant stream of dopamine from the minute their eyes wake up in the morning until they go to sleep at night. Because they're in a constant state of dopamine withdrawal at school, they behave like addicts. They're super emotional, like the smallest thing sets them off. And when you are standing in front of them trying to teach, they're vacant. They have no ability to tune in if your communication isn't packaged in short little clips or if it doesn't have like bright flashing lights. That's actually the way harder part for me than just the outright behaviors, is just being up at the front, talking to a group of kids who have their eyes open, they're looking at me, but they're not there. They're not there. And they have a level of apathy that I've never seen before in my whole career. Punishments don't work because they don't care about them. They don't care about grades. They don't care about college. It's like you are interacting with them briefly in between hits of the internet, which is their real life. I've seen some TikToks recently where teachers are getting a lot of hate, like for not adapting to the kids or punishing them or whatever. And I just got to say, like, I can tell you with absolute certainty, it is not the teacher's fault. It might be the parents' fault. It might be our capitalistic society's fault, but it is not the teacher's fault.
Now, what's interesting about this clip is that, it typically would hit all my buttons. It's not the teacher's fault. The kids are just broken somehow, just whatever. It hits all the things. But for some reason, in this one, I was kind of like, well, no, I don't know. Like, I hear a lot of people talk about the phones, for instance, and I've been pro phone. It's a way that you stay in touch with your kids throughout the day when they've got something going on,
So you're part of the problem.
I mean, I felt like she was like trying to read my mail a little bit because I was like, okay, what's wrong with you? First of all, here's the reason why I've been pro phone, and this might change now with this discussion. The reason I've been pro, it's not really that it's pro, it's just I haven't agreed with the negative aspects of it, because I heard the same thing about television and radio and the internet, and then chat rooms and then social media and whatever. It just always seems to be the next thing is going to be the worst thing for kids. And we survived the internet. We survived laptops in the classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, I'll throw it out to you. Tell me, are you with her? Are you not with her? Are there's parts of this that make sense to you or not?
Well, she drove me nuts. I hated her video, and I hated it. As a matter of fact, I commented it when you shared it with. I just wrote something. I was like, I didn't have time. I didn't realize that's on TikTok, right? What you sent?
Yep, it's on TikTok.
I see. I hate that you can't even type everything, so I just stopped because it kept deleting stuff that I had written. So a couple of things. There's always a sliver of truth in a bunch of madness, right? And just to tell you like how, in the context, as a principal at Shoemaker, we didn't allow phones in classrooms, and often we started off with like, we don't want to see phones at all. Put them in your locker, right? Because it was a distraction. The amount of hate that we got from people in the city and beyond of, oh, you're oppressive. Oh, that's all. You're so rigid. Da, 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 da. And I'm just like, it's a distraction from learning, period. And this was years ago. Now today, and I had a friend, Rachel Scarrett, who's a principal in Washington, D.C. They went so far with they would collect the phones at arrival, and they had these little bags. And this was over a decade ago because we were at the Department of Ed, and we were both the part-time principal ambassador fellows at the Department of Ed. So that's how long ago this was. And she was already ahead of the curve, locking these phones up, coming in, right? And people were like, "Oh my gosh, how could you do that?" And we had a couple of families who were just like, "Oh, I need to get in touch with." I'm like, "You don't need to text your kid in the middle of the day, like it's school, right? Like, what about if it's emergency?" I'm like, "What? This seventh grader is going to come save you during the emergency? Call the front desk the way that we've been doing for generations." My problem with the video is they, those kids, those parents. It's not the fault of I've seen teachers, the way that she described the classroom, I'm like, sis, you can't teach. You don't know how to build a culture, a community, a sense of purpose. Like that's part of it. It's not just teaching content, it's building a sense of purpose. And that extends beyond the phone because I've seen it. I've seen it too many times where teachers are doing it. They're engaging. And yes, it's more challenging if they got their phone underneath the other thing. But if you build a culture, I've seen it happen too many times. I don't like to hearing the they. Oh, and it might be the parents' fault. It might be and teachers, you also have phone addictions. The whole society has a phone addiction. Stop like labeling kids in that way. But I can guarantee you she could use a lot of development in how to teach, how to build a culture, in the community, how to make it just more relevant to kids where they are engaged. They still want to problem solve. They still want to learn. They still want to do things.
But I feel like she headed
gave
you off a
hint.
little
She's
bit,
like, when I'm standing up there talking, I'm like, yeah, you're probably standing up there droning on and on and on. And I'm like, I'll probably get on my phone too.
That's so not the response that she wanted. I feel like, I feel like she tried to head off the criticism that you might give her in that situation because she said, listen, I'm telling you, it's not the teachers or whatever. She already heard that coming. She said, maybe it's the parents. And I thought, okay, well, listen, usually that sets me off. In this case, I don't know why it didn't set me off as much because maybe I'm given a little bit on this apathy thing. Does feel like the world has changed for a lot of students and that school is extra boring. I've been saying, you've heard me say this for years, though. School's boring.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like
it didn't just get boring after the pandemic, though.
Is it just kids though that have apathy? Because part of apathy is not having empathy. And we got the wig down in DC with a whole lot of lack of empathy. Like society has a lack of empathy, right? And that's part of a societal issue. And so we can't just say the kids are one thing, one breed, and everyone else is normal and fine and super productive and everything. Like that's what I didn't like, and it just bothers me because that kind of thing manifests itself in how you teach. That mindset will manifest itself, and then it's this ongoing self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And a big part of it is low expectations. Like I'm like, this woman sets low expectations in her classroom. I can tell just how she talks about they. I'm like, low expectations.
So as Sharif said, this thing around building community in classroom, do you think that's the problem with what she's talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like definitely one of the major issues. I was the same thing when she talked about when I'm up in front of the classroom yapping and the kids' eyes glaze over. I'm just like imagining that, John. I'm just like, yeah, I could imagine. And so I'm on that same tip. And even just the way she's framing it, like going out of her way, saying it might be everybody's fault, but it's not the teachers. And it's like that's the overall message that I got from it. It's like it could be everybody's fault, but it's the teachers, but something's wrong with the kids, right? And it's like, well, yeah, it seems like that's always been a constant refrain, at least in my lifetime, that there's always something wrong and something, horrible's happening, super predators and all this, you know what I mean? I just get concerned when people like that put these ideas out there and then people are like, yeah, it's the children's fault. And that is a reflection of adults within our society. So again, Sharif hit this right on the head. That's a societal larger issue. And school wasn't on the up and up to begin with before all this. So even all those things, but she does have a point with the imposition of more technology in the classroom. I saw it myself, where students treat it more as a check off a box, like, oh, I checked off that box, like, oh, we're ready to move on. I'm like, but you don't understand what box you checked, right? And I saw that a lot with like laptops and everything like that. And of course, you have to learn how to teach with that and when it's useful and when it's not, right? But that's the conversation. This conversation about like something's wrong with the kids, they're apathetic, there's nothing behind their eyes. It's like, all right, come on, lady.
But it's where do you land with no phones in the school? Like I'm anti-phone in learning environments. Like,
oh yeah, me too.
You don't need a phone.
Yeah, there's no purpose, and like I wavered. How
am I gonna like cheat on tests if I don't have my phone? y'all just so.
Well, your way to cheat, and you might get distracted by TikTok anyway, so it still ain't helping. True. You know what I mean?
I'll make a TikTok about cheating.
Exactly. I just don't, and I remember so much of the pushback, like you're not going to prepare kids. Technology is so important, and look at all the things you can do. And like, yes, so. In reality, before the smartphone came and everything, they would talk about everything they could do. So one of the times I remember having this debate, I was like, okay, so that means when I was a student, I couldn't fit everything that the phone could do in one little compartment, but I should have brought my phone, my television, my record player, my Walkman.
Oh, stop it, Sharif,
all of that, and put that on my desk and still said like, oh, I'm fully engaged. Like that doesn't make sense to me. Yes, it's all of those things in this compartment, but yes, I should have it. It should just be ubiquitous and just all the time, every time. I don't get it. I don't understand why people are pushing. And it was that, and plus I might need to get in touch with them for emergency. Like, oh, your house is burning down.
You know what? Let me challenge both of you on this.
Save you. Like that's insane to me.
I'm gonna challenge both of you on this.
Please do. Because I feel like an old man, like, you know what I mean?
No, I'm co-signing
coming
this,
out of the
Sharif. I'm
time
with
zone.
you.
Both of y'all.
You too, Ish. Like,
y'all both are younger than me, and y'all sound like you're on somebody's lawn, you know. It's like, oh, get off my lawn.
Yeah, get off.
Yeah, so
whippersnappers.
Here's the challenge that I would give to you. I would challenge you to answer whether or not it could become a tool of learning. Is there something in it that could become integrated into the classroom? They're going to have it anyways. They have it in their hands. It has a lot of power. And by it, I mean the phone. They have a phone and it has a lot of power in it. Is there an opportunity to integrate it into the learning scheme? I noticed that, like, Kahoot, if y'all know what Kahoot is, it's a platform that integrated technology platforms that kids might find at home with what you do at school, and they created a way for it to have some call and response and some trivia type stuff and whatever. So is there a way it can become a tool? I guess is my only question.
there's a lot of cute things you can do with a phone that you can also do with just human interaction, and they have things like clickers that you could do some of the same things. They have these clickers where it lights up on the smart board. There's what's the YouTube channel with Sal Khan created, to support tutoring and things like that, like Khan Academy, right?
I feel like you're making my point though, because that was an innovation of the technology.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you don't have to put that on the desk for the full 8 hours of your, like, you know what I mean? Like there's specific times and there, not, and again, we have a digital divide. We know all computers and all internet access, all those things are not the same. And, maybe in some rural areas you might, but just to make it where that's the norm and the default to me is absolutely nuts. And we're asking for more challenging and engagement. We're literally putting a distraction, and all the psychological studies that talks about the rewiring of the brain, the dopamine, the attention, distractions, all of those things. Yet we say, oh yeah, let's just put this on the. I challenge teachers to sit through professional development without getting on their phone and watching videos. Like, let's start there.
You are so anti-teacher. It's crazy.
I love teachers.
It's crazy.
I just don't like BS.
and, like I want to co-sign that 100% because even when when I was a teacher, like when I started seeing like students start coming in with those things in their ears, I'm like, what's those things in your ears? No, there's no headphones. Oh no, sir, just it's hooked up to my phone. I'm not listening to nothing. Nah, bruh, take jaws off. Yeah. And even just like talking with them, like students would admit to you in their moments, like, yeah, I get distracted sometimes with that phone. They'll admit that to you, that it's in the way of their learning. And yes, you can use it for like a learning tool, but I don't know if the benefits outweigh the cost.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
There's a small benefit. Yes, there is a benefit. Yes, there's a thing. But first of all, the effectiveness you have to have as a teacher to say, hey, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to do this. Take out your phone and do that. That means you're a highly effective educator that, again, has a sense of purpose and community in there, where the culture is a way where, like, yes, we're going to do this, and then we're not going to be distracted. We're going to put the tool away. The problem is the tool never goes away when you don't have that ability.
Yeah,
and that's a significant number. Yeah. Teachers are saying they're unprepared coming out, to begin teaching. They're unprepared. And then when they look at professional development, many of them say, oh, the professional development I'm receiving once I got to my school is ineffective. So wait a minute, you came unprepared, and now the training and development you're getting is ineffective. So what are we doing here? How?
Okay, so let's first of all, I don't want to be in either of your classes because it's going to be boring to me.
You would not be bored. That's the whole thing. You would
not be edge of your seat, bro.
You'd be engaged. You'd be edge of my seat, trying to run out the classroom, but before the end of the time.
Like, edge of your seat, we're like facing the door, right? Like,
I don't know if y'all ever had this experience, but I remember this as a student looking up at the clock, thinking, "Damn, it's only been 5 minutes. Damn, it's only been 12 minutes."
Now, did you have
it's
other
only been
teachers
20 minutes,
that got you that lured you into learning? And when they did, what was it about that did cause you to do that? And it doesn't even have to be just when you were a student, even as you're older, when you were in, taking, your college courses. Were there times when there were things? What was the foundation of those times when you were kind of like, yo?
I'd have to say that when it clicked the most for me is when something was happening that I was interested in, that I would perk up. So the more you talked about something that was
interested, did it have to be entertaining or interested? Because it's two different things.
Well, it was entertaining to me if it was interesting, because now you got my attention, right? So if you're talking about things that have nothing to do with me or whatever, I would zone out. I would do a lot of daydreaming when I was a kid. My mind would float right out the window for entire classes. And it would be because those entire classes had nothing to do with me. I didn't care really. But, you have a teacher here or there who would incorporate something that I did pay attention to or care about, that was either in culture or music or something like that. Then all of a sudden I'm paying attention a little bit more, listen, in my age group too, there wasn't a lot of care or caring about whether or not we were getting it. I grew up in the era of I get paid whether you learn or not. Well, I feel like it might be a little bit more touchy feely than it was back because it was just like, listen, you fail, you fail. It's on you. You know, like I remember teachers who straight up, this is the type of stuff I still hate about school. I don't give A's. I'll tell you right up front, I don't give A's. I never understood that because I'm like, well, then why have an A? God damn it. If there's an A, why have it on the scale if you're not going to give it? I don't do extra credit. Why? Why? Sometimes I put more into the extra credit work than I do into the regular work, and it's because I get to choose what I do for extra credit, whatever.
Yeah, you wouldn't like my classroom. You're not gonna not do anything all month and just say, "Can I have some extra credit?"
See,
Like, it's not, it's
looking
just
like
not
Dave
extra.
Chappelle.
You
Like,
need the
that's
credit
not-
first to get the extra credit. You need the credit. Like you're like, I did nothing. Hey, can I get 5 things extra credit? Like, wait, but you know
Oh,
what?
God.
Bro. You
But
should
I
have
do
what
like
you're
the
supposed to
idea.
do.
But I do like the idea of having choice in assignments.
Mhm,
I love
mhm,
that. Like, I think
mhm.
that is an effective teaching strategy. You're like, okay, you
Yeah.
want the student to practice. Here are multiple ways and modalities to practice something to demonstrate that you have the skill. Because talking about real life, we have different scenarios where we might be like, hey, maybe I'll prove it this way, or maybe I'll prove it this way, or maybe I'll investigate it this way, or maybe I'll convince someone this way. There are different choices, and like, okay, which one's most effective? Which one can I lean in on? Like all of that, that's great teaching.
You know what I like about that?
But
So,
don't show
so
up and
um,
just say I want extra credit, and you ain't do nothing.
well, that's
You know what I mean?
that's just deficit thinking about how I was showing up. You just practicing deficit
You already
thinking.
said you were trying to run out the door.
You know, you just like practicing deficit thinking. Anyways, I interviewed, I think her name was Rebecca Winthrop at Brookings Institute. She has a book called The Disengaged Teen. And in that book, the central theme of the book is that the more that students have control, the more they feel a sense of control over their learning, the more that they'll respond to the learning. But things that get in the way of that, especially with parents, is like excessive nagging, micromanaging, imposing external expectations on them. That are counterproductive because eventually it'll create disengagement and resistance in them. So the idea is to like nurture the intrinsic motivation in students and um, try and get them involved in their own planning for their days. And there's a lot in the book about autonomy and agency and how that's being taken away from you now. Like, listen, you shaking your head begging for it because you too old for this nonsense. All right, Uncle Ruckus. No, but see, like, listen. So you just gave an example of that though, because the example that you just gave is giving somebody choices of lessons, right? For instance, like I think I told y'all this should resonate with you that I got in trouble once for doing an essay on Huey Newton because the only choices that we had were 3. Now, who do you think the 3 were that we got to choose? Right?
Powder wig dudes.
No. It's still black folks, but it
you
was
mean
like you could do Martin Luther King Jr. or Rosa Parks. Yeah, that type of stuff.
We're not going to say their names like that. All right, like we still give reverence.
Oh yeah, we still
okay, all right. Well, Rosa Parks. Martin Luther King Jr. But here I come writing an essay on Huey, just number 1, because I wanted to buck the system. And 2, I knew that I wasn't supposed to do it, but I was going to do it because I was going to take agency for what I wanted to learn about and what I wanted to write about. You're not going to limit me to these few because at the end of the day, if you're judging me on the writing, or you're judging me on, if the lesson is about writing and learning how to do history or whatnot, then let me write about what I want to write about. Yeah. That's choice. That gave me,
that
had
kind
autonomy,
of choice,
so.
yes. 100%. That kind of choice and the way this there are ways to do it. There's some people who give ineffective choice and it's just like, I want kids to have autonomy. Well, tell me exactly how that 6th grader is supposed to build their own learning system. Not like just things engaged, but like there are certain things, right? Like, and so I just think, again, we're talking about the level of skill of the educator, right? And how well prepared people are or not. And so there are ways to give some autonomy, But there's also some, often needs to be direct instruction when it's a new complex, issue. So it can't always be like, because I've heard too many people just with this weird philosophies of teaching, and then I'm also see their outcomes. I'm like, yeah, but that's ineffective. Now it's one thing to have a specific project, and then you're applying skills to that project. You know what I mean? Like that's very different. And so I would ask, like, hey, who do you know what? We want to talk about the dynamic tension or the duality of man.
See, bro, you're
Choose
doing
who
too
you want to
much. You're
talk
doing
about.
too
Right.
much.
No,
You're doing
because
too much.
you
What
can
did
even
you
talk
just
about
say?
this.
Say that
Well,
again. I dare you.
The dualities of man, like, just the
See,
complexities.
the hell?
But if this was a lesson, if you're reading a novel and you're talking about character development, and then you're applying that to themselves, like, hey, when have you had feelings that had this tension and you had to make a choice? Right? Okay, now choose a character, choose a person, a historical figure who you write about where they had to make choices and maybe it was inconsistent. Right? And so there are ways to do it, but you choose it. And you're talking about something that you also may have dealt with. I mean, it's a million different ways. Like I used to have so much fun reading Animal Farm with my 8th graders. It was so dope. They loved it. And at first they're like, what? An animal? Think about a farm. When we got into it and then comparing it to the Russian Revolution, and then they would choose other revolutions to talk about, like, hey, did they meet their goals? What happened? What happened when you switch power? Does it, like, they were engrossed in something that they wouldn't have necessarily
What
chosen on
year
their
was
own.
that? Was that before cell phones?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay. See, because you just bored the hell out of me with that Animal Farm. The hell is Animal Farm, bruh?
That is a
Listen,
beautiful
I'm
book.
over here.
It should always be read. Every kid should. That should be part of the.
Should read
Talking about
that
canon,
book specifically.
that's the
Yeah. That book specifically, you think everybody should read it. I might go back and read it. I haven't read it in a long time, but Ish, I'm thinking about your classroom, especially since I sat in that breakout session you did in Philly. And it just seems like the classroom has a lot going on that is like interactive. Like I'm not just sitting there waiting for you to finish your lecture on something, or just, you're not just talking at me, right? And I'm just like sitting there like waiting for you to be done. It feels like, no, I don't have time to be waiting to be done because I'm involved. Like, y'all have these group discussion type things or whatnot. Do you think that is something that this teacher that we were just talking about, if she had more strategies like that she would herself start feeling a little bit more ownership, that it is partially something she could do? Because right now it feels like she sees it as hopeless.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it makes me think, every once a week on Thursday night I teach a graduate course on social studies methods to people who will be in the classroom who are student teaching right now. And so like the one thing I've noticed and I've learned throughout the years is that like even what we're talking about right now is like layered, right? There's a level of that the folks need who are being trained to be teachers where their own mind state needs to be shifted. And I think you've been alluding to that, right? About where the teacher's at, right? Where they're approaching the content, how they're approaching the students, how they're structuring the class. And half the time, or most of the time, those type of conversations aren't happening in teacher preparation programs, aren't happening during teacher professional learning communities during the school day, right? And I think that just like what you described, how I structure a session, that those type of ways need to be structured in a way where folks are given the ability and opportunities to share what they're doing in a non-judgmental space where they're not feeling like they're being evaluated for what they're talking about, while at the same time being encouraged to kind of be innovative and try out things that they historically haven't tried out in their classroom to do. So just like you talking about when you were in school, when you were young, and you look up at the clock, and it's like, that was only 10 minutes. It felt like it was like just like an hour and a half, right? Same reason, but you in the lunchroom, you're like, wow, lunch is over already? Because you were already engaged in learning. You were engaged in back and forth with people. You were getting the dirt. You were sharing information. People are listening to you, not to tell you what to think, but to tell you what they think in order for you to kind of internalize and determine and synthesize your own thoughts about something. And see, that's really what, for me, learning is all about. So the more you can structure those real world type of like conversations and sharing of information that people naturally do with one another, while also putting the text and curating the resources that are put in front of that they will discuss, while being purposeful and connecting those pieces, not just so it's an isolated thing, that's an overall thing that they're building and connecting it in their brain, not just what it sounds like and what it looks like, but also the context and the meaning of the significance of even knowing what it means and where it fits. And I think that's the way, like, I know I'm getting very abstract right there when it comes to teaching.
It's not very abstract. I just would wonder, my question for you would be, is that more work?
Yes, it's more work.
As
Teaching
an
is
educator, is
hard.
that more work? I mean, what if you're having like, listen, you got to go every day, 5 days a week, and you're going to have those days where you're like, I don't want to do all that.
You're going to have listen, teaching is hard because you have to be super planned. If you're not super planned, and it isn't waking up in the morning, printing out a worksheet, coming in the journal and be like, you're reading this page to this page, leave me alone. And there's tons of, answer 5 questions and then talk to a neighbor about it. And there's no real dynamic going on. So yes, there's going to be days where you're not going to feel like, overextending yourself and putting yourself out there like that. But you got to push yourself a little bit. You got to fake it a little bit until it's real, especially as a teacher, because sometimes those moments, won't be able to be, you won't be able to get them back. And the students know those flows. They respect when your energy is low, especially if you created that classroom culture where you're respecting them when their energy is, you're modeling that type of kind of treatment and humanity towards them. They'll treat you in the same way. I remember a couple times I got sick in the middle of the day, and the students like, "Oh, Jimenez, you need to go home." Like not in a way of like shooing me away, but like real concern about my well-being
as a human. Yeah.
As a human. And
What do you do if you're doing all this work? I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
Oh, no, I was saying that's why it's so layered, because it's such a human endeavor.
And Chris,
what if you're doing all this? Quick. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The best teachers that I've seen, in my 26 years in the school and classroom, it was very few of those days.
Very few of those days where they feel like it's,
oh, I just didn't see that from my best teachers. They were on, and they recognized that 180 days out of the 365, I'm on. And I think part of their strategy was they weren't carrying all the cognitive load. I think that's when people get burned out, and they're like, because they're doing all the talking for 60 minutes and they got 5 classes in a row. They're doing all the thinking. They're doing all the talking. They're doing all the correcting. They're doing all like that will burn you out, and you'll come in like, man, I don't have it in me to talk for, 5 hours straight today. The best teachers, the class was humming. The class was thinking. The class was engaging, right? And so, as they say, they weren't the sage on the stage. They were the guide on the side. That not only preserves your energy, it engages and brings other learners in. And if you have that community, and again, this isn't like, I want to say it's just not abstract, because we've seen dope educators do this day after day, hour after hour, year after year, with all kind of students who are behind, students who are ahead, students who are struggling with one concept but not the other. Like, I've just seen it too many times to buy in to the, like what the teacher, these kids just can't. Like, nah, I've seen it. Like, you can't convince me what my eyes actually saw over and over and over and what I experienced.
I wonder if the brain is fundamentally different than it was before, now that we are so used to what this teacher talked about, the dopamine hits. So you are all throughout the day, you are clicking and liking and scrolling and jumping from a thing to a better thing, a thing that, like, once you get, oh, I'm sick of reading this, the amount that people read into an article now, people used to read all the way to the last word. And then, it slowly but surely started turning into scanning rather than reading. People scan articles.
Now it's just whatever the picture, whatever the headline is, right? Like, that's all right. I read this article. Well, tell me about it. Well, it was I saw the
if you read Axios, it's like the perfect example, because Axios doesn't even write full articles. They just break it down. This is the issue. This is why it matters. This is 3 points. And it's all in bullet points and short sentences and short, whatever. And every article is that way. And that is because they are catering to the changed attention span.
but it's not to the
So
kids, right? But that's my whole point. That's one of the
I mean,
points, right?
adults are doing this now. Like adults
Exactly.
are
So
having
it's
this problem.
it's a
So yeah,
societal issue, right? But the way
yeah.
that she phrased it was like everyone else is fine and it's just the kids and maybe the parents, right? Or the capitalism of the society, but teachers are immune to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like part of teaching is the intellectual rigor as a learner, which allows you to teach, which means you have to do that. Like how many teachers will say like, yeah, I don't read nothing during the, I don't read at all. Like I'm like, you teach like how do you teach, right? Because that means you also need to go in depth, right? And I agree, the dopamine, the changing of it, they say like you hand those devices, kids will like their brains are being rewired. I believe that deeply. And students can develop self-control and self-discipline the same way any other human being can. When we talk about like pedagogy and andragogy, how about just human goji, right? Like what do humans need to be engaged? It's because
Yeah.
it's so similar, right? And you can develop the muscle to be more disciplined in the classroom. And it takes work, right? It's intellectual rigor that I think sometimes we just forget, like, oh, kids are just supposed to show up with that. Nah, even after a summer, maybe even after a weekend, maybe even after lunch, we got to like remind, redevelop, re-engage, yeah, reinforce. Like all of these things are part of teaching and learning. You know what I mean? But I just get up frustrated when I just hear about they have a problem. Everything else I'm doing is perfect. It's like it's the way it should be, but they're not, and they're not fitting into this structure that I have. That's
Here's
the
my
part
best
that
pushback
frustrates
on you,
me.
though. This would be my best pushback, and you guys can see if you could handle it. My best pushback would
If
be
I don't like it, I'm gonna just get on my phone and just find a video that I like. You know what I mean? Tune you out,
that
man.
would prove my point. That would just prove my point. The thing that I would push back on would be this. The best people to figure out what works for your attention and keeping people's attention are capitalists and social media folks, because what they're making their money off of is your attention and the so-called attention economy
Yeah, I was about to
is the
say you had
greatest
the term for
product.
that, attention
Yeah, it's the
economy.
attention
Yeah.
economy is the greatest product in the United States right now. You might think it's gold or diamonds or something else. No, it's 100%. They are fighting for your attention and they are creating all kinds of sophisticated ways to keep your attention. Every algorithm is aimed at attention. So what you have kids going through all day long is the attention economy, and then you put them in the disintention attention economy, which is a school, right? So all day long, and everything else, the entire world is conspiring to find out what they will pay attention to, how long they'll pay attention for, and all that. And then you put them in a school where all that stops, skirt, and time stops. And that's not just kids; it's everybody. It's all of us. We're all bored, I think, more often now. The movies aren't doing as well, right? So theater movies, like sitting in a movie theater, now they're talking about Hollywood might collapse because people are seeing, like, have you noticed the dearth of like movies that come out where everybody's talking about it, or because people aren't they can't sit. I mean, I remember movies that were like 2.5 hours or longer now. People won't sit for longer than an hour and a half now for a movie. Even when they watch them at home, they'll scan a movie in the way that they scan articles. So, they'll have a documentary on, they'll be watching it, and then they'll be flipping through their phone and they'll miss important parts of that documentary that they're watching, or a movie, whatever. So, I mean, the classroom sometimes feels like it sits idle while the whole world is changing. So, anyways, that's my final thought on all of this. Is just I believe in what you guys say because you're educators. I think the lay people in the world, when they hear about this, I do think the teacher brought up some things that I think as parents and others we need to be thinking about how we play our role. Because if you have a teacher walking into a classroom and you have kids, for instance, and I know this in my own household, you have kids that have snuck and stayed up until 3 a.m. on a school night, right? And you wake up and you find out, that they're in the morning, they're dragging. And then they go to a classroom and they put their head down because you're not there. Uh, if I'm that teacher on that I don't know that I have a strategy for a classroom of like half of them, being of kids where they're putting their head down in classroom because they didn't get enough sleep, or they don't want to participate because they're tired, or any of that type of stuff. So I don't have an answer for it. You guys have the better answers because you've had to deal with a real challenge as teachers. You've had to deal with this as a parent, especially of one that I would consider to be a disengaged teen. I felt a little bit of sympathy when I was listening to her that I normally wouldn't have, except for I have something of a disengaged teen on my hands. And it doesn't seem like a lot of the strategies that we would try to make something different happen for him are working. So we're just trying. We'll just keep trying. But he'll tell you straight up, I don't like this. I don't like school. I don't like I'm not trying to. When did that start being okay for, as a tell your parent, I'm not trying to? First of all, what the hell is a trying to? Goddamn. You know whose house you live in, damn it? I'm not trying to. I'm a Gen X parent, so I know some of this stuff is playing more with me than it would have played with my boomer parents, right? I'm not trying to, just, anyways, that's my final word. I'll just say as a parent, I get the struggle. I fit the struggle. So what would you guys say as your final word?
Yeah, well, I'd say the struggle is real. And I agree with you that attention economy, I think is extremely powerful. The distractions, the amount of things that, don't even allow you time to think, is so pervasive that it is a challenge at home, challenge at school. I am one of the, I got an 8-year-old. You're like, all my friends in class got a phone. I'm like, all parents are different. And and there are a lot of different rules all around the globe, no phone. Right. And and I recognize that, as Ish said earlier, teaching is extremely, challenging, and it is also extremely powerful. And what you have to start off with, everything starts with the foundation of what is the mindset about the children and the communities that love them and send them to us, and, in school. That is the foundation. And nothing is more, incisive than high expectations or low expectations. That continuum seeps in to how you plan, how you question, what are the expectations, what are the rules, what is the community. All of that starts with, what are my expectations? Not only for children, but starting on, what are the expectations I hold for myself and that other people are holding for me. And so, yeah, it is a challenge, but again, I've seen it done and it's not easy for it. There's a lot of, challenges, we were talking about phone, but there's all kind of distractions, impoverished children, children, dealing with this issue or that issue, what they call it when you have to keep moving, when you move around a lot, you know what I mean? Mobility, like all of these kind of things are all challenges in society. And so again, these are all things that, this is why I love educators who are effective, and striving to be effective, because there are so many things to contend with. But having a classroom that's inviting, engaging, is often, somewhere that students are craving for, even if they don't have the language for it. But they're craving for that level of engagement. And again, I've seen it happen so many times. So many times. I can't even count. Like, it is not this one-off, this one superhero teacher, and they're the only one in the building that can do it. We would see floors of people doing it. And that was the kids' experience, period to period to period. So all the struggle, all the work, but it starts with mindset and expectations. And yeah, that's this attention economy. Like, as communities, we have to do better with how much we push distraction. Because with all that you're saying, we have people saying, yeah, put all that, the biggest distraction right there, let them have it right there on the desk,
You with your anti-technology self. You with your anti-technology.
Yeah,
Listen, I'm gonna
bring
challenge
a
you.
wheel and stone. Like, what I mean? What is it? The stick of, like, just bring the most basic,
You're
which
gonna
is
have
the
them
brain.
going back to abacus. Listen,
That's problem solving. It might be,
and the
Stop it.
kinesthetic aspect of actually moving the drum and counting, and then the visual piece. Listen, bro, that probably did much
If I knew
better
how to
than-
do that, I would actually, like, that wouldn't be my whole thing. But imagine a kid just being able to understanding the concept of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this much. I'll challenge you to write about this. I'll challenge you to, because I think we're putting together over time, with every conversation, with every interaction with each other, with every exchange of information, we're putting together a canon of what will save the minds, the black minds of our youth. And we're not waiting for other people to come up with what those ideas should be. And everything we just talked about is an idea. How do we get our kids, how do we get our young people engaged again? What do we do for parents that are like me saying, man, this is a challenge. That life is different. Who can I reach out to? What, which book or which, article, who's written about this specific to our kids, Because I noticed when you just said, low income kids, you said something about them, and the thing that triggered for me right away is, of course, you get addicted to certain types of entertainment when it's freer than other types of things that other people are doing, right? Like, you have wealthy families that, are vacationing in Vail, or
But they're
doing,
addicted to phones too.
no, this is the whole thing. When they study, it's very much the poorer you are, the more time you're spending in the attention economy because it's kind of free. It's kind of, there's more free stuff there to be attending to if you're not busy doing something that's expensive that other people, middle class and upper middle class families are doing for their kids, right? Yes, there's a problem with middle class kids, I think, on phones too, but there are just certain things that you can't afford as entertainment that take up some of your attention too.
Man, free my butt. Somebody paying for that phone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey,
Boost
free,
Mobile.
Anyways.
Yo,
that's the easiest thing, Chris. You know what I mean? Like, yo, phone is cut off now. I just called, whoever, Verizon or whoever. You know what I mean? Like, that's the easiest, but we're trying to find ways to bring them in and not just like.
I'm just going to tell you that the phone is the new abacus. All that stuff y'all just say with them expensive words, is kinetic. Well, my phone is hella kinetic. My phone is super kinetic. when I engage with my phone, I'm kinetic, man. I'm in Connecticut. Anyways, Ish, what's your final word, bro?
I was just going to say, just like junk food, right? Those empty calories that you just take, and it does damage, right? And unfortunately, like that's what a lot of the information and stuff that our children are being inundated with, that we're being inundated with, right? Being marketed to, not only marketed generally, but targeted marketing based on your search engine and what you talk about, even when your phone is off, as long as it's around you, right? And I think that we, like Sharif just said, like students, children, they're like hungry to have some authentic, real, like, lean meat. You know what I mean? When I say lean meat, like, like something like that gives them nourishment, and they can know the difference. Yeah. And I've seen it, I've witnessed it. You even hear students say it and acknowledge it and be like, oh man, I wish I didn't have to leave here right now. Oh, like what happened? Like, can we do this more tomorrow? Like, you hear that on a consistent basis. And I know that our oldest son, our 18-year-old, acted a fool at some point at the beginning of the year. We took away his cell phone, got him a flip phone. That boy now is like reading like every single day. He even came up to us like 2 weeks afterwards. He's like, I was mad at first when y'all took my phone. He's like, and I do get teased for having a flip phone at school. He's like, but I'm starting to like pay attention more now. And I feel like I know what's going on more, that I'm aware now. And like, he's articulating this to us. So we're like, his 10-year-old brother.
Is that to soften you up to get that phone back, or is it like legit authentic?
Listen, that boy is stuck with a flip phone as long as we paying that bill, bro. And we're thinking about that for the 10-year-old. And they're already cut off during the weekday from video games, television, and electronics. And we have witnessed kind of when they do it a lot, like during summertime or during break, they do have that withdrawal period. They do kind of act a hot mess. Their behavior and emotionalities all over the place. And when we do it on more on a consistent basis, by the end of the week, they are sharp on point. Like, they're not even thinking about TV. They're not like hanging around us in the evening asking what they should do. They're like actually engaged.
Yeah, let them be bored sometimes. My kids are a little meaner or impatient when they are too much on their phones and stuff. They're a little, I noticed, like they're more impatient with each other.
Yep.
If they've been like, and that drives me nuts. I'm like, yo, we don't talk like that in here.
That's
I'm
right.
like, you know what? That's screen time. That's too much. That's an indication there's been too much screen time, this week, whatever. So
Yeah, you gotta cut
So
it
I'm going
off.
to take y'all through memory lane, number one. The BlackBerry, the
I used to
Crackberry.
love my BlackBerry in the district as a
And
principal.
didn't they used to call it a Crackberry? Why? Because you were always doing this. See, we talk about these kids, but we started it. Tactile
It was
buttons.
the texture, yeah, the way
Look
the
at that.
buttons
Look at that. Y'all remember that?
worked.
Y'all don't remember that, do you? Look at
I
that.
don't remember the
Y'all
antenna.
don't remember that. All right, let's keep going.
Look, why does he have a box of these? This museum.
So
The
there you
Nokia,
go.
what is that?
You remember this?
Nokia.
You remember
Yeah,
that?
the
Look at that action.
Yeah.
This is
actually bigger than
indestructible. You could throw this against the wall and still make calls on it. All right. Okay. Let's keep going on the road. See, like
This guy got a box of phone
bam.
museum.
Look at that.
What is that? The razor or something?
That's the razor. Look at how thin that is. See, this still
I never
would fit in
had
your
any
pocket
of
today.
these, but I saw enough commercials to kind of almost recognize them.
Me too. I never had neither of them.
I had the BlackBerry though.
Yeah.
For those of y'all listening to this or watching this right now, my son is our producer for this particular show, and his very first phone was this little piece right there.
Oh,
See,
that's so
there you
cute.
go. Yeah, and then listen. So what I should probably do, the reason I brought these out because they're sitting right over here in this box that I have, is when I just heard you Ish say that your son went back to a flip phone. What I should do with mine that is having a little bit of the distraction issue right now, and it's severe. It's a severe distraction issue. I should see if I could get the card put back in one of these puppies and just see how it works out. I don't think that these work anymore on the type of systems that we have, but a flip phone still allows you to get in contact and you still can text.
Especially if you're going through an emergency, Chris, while he's in school, then you can just call him on the flip phone and say, help.
And I could tell him, like, listen, phones have gotten out of hand, right? Like, look at this, John, as y'all would say. And look at this.
That was effective use of John, Chris. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Now come on now.
That is wild.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's crazy.
This fits in your pocket still. You can drop this in a shirt pocket. Anyways, I feel like I've gotten off track, but I do think this was a very good conversation because I feel like strategies. The reason I'm sympathetic right now is because I have the actual issue with a child that if you were to talk to me about it and make it about the teacher being the problem, I could tell you for sure we have some work to do that we're struggling for answers for as parents,
100%.
Ourselves. And the whole idea, if we did what you did, Ish, if we took it, whatever, that might turn out worse, that might go the other direction. So
at first, like he didn't talk to us for like a good week and a half, like straight up just like angry walking around us. And like I was like, whatever, bro.
Had a tube.
We still
maybe I'll just send them to your house because we don't have that type of situation.
But
that house is, I'll send them to you.
They have articles and research out there, like 2-year-olds taking their device, like the little iPad or whatever from 2 and 3-year-olds, and their reaction is like, they just have clips. And I'm sure like any baby, if you take something that they're, hell bent, but they're going to look a lot different, as far as the rage, with a kid when you take those things and they like show these, I'm like, whew, man. Like best thing to do is don't introduce it to them.
I would not say,
delay it
and
as
that's gonna be
long
hard
as possible.
Listen, my wife is a G, man. Every time they do something like that or like give an attitude around this, she's like, all right, no more. Like she'll cut them off on their weekend usage. So it's gotten to the point where they're like, no, my bad.
Yeah, I'm going to have to send my kids to your house. Yeah, I'm going to send them to Philly for a week, get them detox.
Yeah, I could be a lot more consistent, but when I get, when they're there, I'm like, oh, that's an indication like I've been lax. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's also true. That's also true.
Well, I appreciate you, brothers. This has been another, I think, great conversation, great show for people listening and watching. Please share it with others. And if you think that anybody would benefit from it or an educator that in your life who would benefit from it, share it. This has been another episode of Freedom Friday. You're still not free, but hopefully you're freer after this discussion with all of us. We'll see you on the next episode.